Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have got Kyle Cushman. And this is a special edition of the Green Flag as we are giving you the NASCAR playoff predictions for both of us as we go into the 10-week intense playoff schedule here for the NASCAR Cup Series. And man, there's a lot of different things that this could go. It's 2020. Anything can happen in these playoffs. And with the way that the races are shaping up, it seems like that's likely to be the case. So, Kyle, first off, how are you doing today? Because this is going to be a fun one. This one we've been looking forward to for a while.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing great. It's the lead up all until the first race of the playoffs here. I've been waiting a long time to do our playoff predictions, and I'm very excited for this one, I got to say.
Yeah, same here. It's going to be a wild couple of weeks here. So we'll just get into the breaking news before we get into our playoff predictions here. Some news and notes that have happened over the past couple of days since we recorded on Tuesday. So first off, we'll stick with the NASCAR theme here as Phoenix Raceway has announced that they will have 20% capacity for the championship weekend this upcoming November for the NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series. And I think the ARCA Menard Series is there that weekend as well. So 4 different series there, so 20% capacity per day. And obviously, that was a big question coming into these playoffs, as most tracks have announced if they're going to have fans or not. But Phoenix was the big championship race, and we didn't know until now, but they will have fans for the playoffs finale. So we were crowned a champion for the first time at Phoenix Raceway this season. So instead of ISM Raceway, they get back to Phoenix Raceway, what it should be called. And obviously going to be fun to see some fans in the stands, Kyle.
Yeah, obviously for the championship race, you would hope that you'd be able to have some capacity. And at least for now, it's a good sign that they're looking at 20% here. Hopefully all of that goes off without a hitch. There's no problems there. And at 20%, I doubt there would be any problem because obviously Phoenix recently has had the major overhaul in the facilities there, which is why they have the championship race going forwards. So you would imagine that everything would be good going forwards. But yeah, for a championship race, you would hope that you would at least have some kind of fan base there. And it's a good thing that they've been able to decide on 20% as the number.
Yeah, hopefully it's not like an Indy 500 scenario where they have to cancel it last minute.
Yeah.
Hopefully everything stays safe down there in Arizona. We can have some fans in the stands because I'm sure the drivers would appreciate it. It just adds that little bit of element. You don't want to hear you can hear every echo when the drivers are celebrating whoever wins the championship. So, looking forward to seeing fans back in the stands for a championship finale this upcoming November. And just quickly on NASCAR as well, the Daytona regular season ratings were absolutely fantastic. It was the most watched sporting event of the weekend, beating out some basketball games in the PGA Tour. So they had 3.869 million viewers is what Adam Stern tweeted out this afternoon. And obviously that's, people were saying NASCAR are dying, but it's a great thing that they are competing with NBA basketball, especially LeBron James, who was competing at the same sort of time period with the LA Lakers against the Portland Trailblazers. So obviously great to see some fans are watching from home, and for the other ones that weren't able to watch it at home, they were probably in the stands because they had quite the turnout there at Daytona for the race as well. So just a quick little note on that, and then we move on to probably the biggest thing that has come out since we recorded on Tuesday, and that's in Formula One, as Claire Williams and the Williams family is stepping away from the Williams Racing, the company that Sir Frank has built up and founded from the ground up in 1977. And they're going to be taking a step back effective immediately after this Italian Grand Prix weekend. So, Kyle, this is obviously a big bit of news. There's been speculation for a couple of years now. This may happen eventually here, especially with the decline in Williams' performance on the track. So what are your thoughts here as we are losing a bit of legacy in Formula One?
I think the best word is heartbreaking, whether it's the history of it, whether it's having a female in a prominent role in a sport that doesn't necessarily have much of that. Losing all of that is heartbreaking. I think that's the best word to describe it. Whether you look at the history of the Williams family, obviously we'll still have the Williams name associated with that team going forwards. All plans are to keep the actual team, the Williams team, going forward. It's just that the family itself won't actually be involved anymore. And that's a disappointing thing, because any time that you can have a historic team, a historic family still entrenched in the sport and directly involved in the team, that's always something that is positive. And obviously it's been disappointing to see over these past few years the decline in performance, the loss of sponsorship that has resulted in worse and worse performance on the track. Obviously a slight uptick this year, but the sale of the team that was necessary and the changes going forward, it just made sense now for the split, which kind of seemed inevitably these last few years to happen now with everything changing at the team from ownership down. So from that, the timing of it just made sense. And then in terms of Claire Williams herself, as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's definitely going to suck not having a female in a prominent role in Formula One going forwards after this weekend. Obviously, a female could be hired to take over that role. We don't know that. But at least for now, not having Claire Williams in that role, regardless as to the job that you thought she did, I thought she had done a pretty solid job this past year, at least, trying to build that team back up from what was a horrendous year last year. But it definitely sucks losing her in the garage area, having a female in a prominent role there. But we'll see what happens next, who's hired as the replacement going forwards, and what happens with the team the rest of the season and into the future.
Yeah, it's the end of an era, really. It's crazy to think that it's been since 1977 before either of us were born. Almost when my parents were born, he was founded the team, Sir Frank, and it's just going to be a different vibe around Williams Racing now that it's not really a family-run organization as much anymore. And we'll see if that leads to new great things for the racing team, or if they kind of stay put and in the back of the pack on the grid. So it's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is over the upcoming, maybe not for the rest of this season, but most likely next season, if there's any differences in the team's performance, or there's a different vibe around the team itself. It was sold to Doralton. I think that's how you hit it.
Something like that. It's an American company.
It's a private American investment firm. So hopefully they do the right things and keep and get Williams back to the top spot on the podium, because that's where we all would like to see. I'm sure George Russell would like to move up eventually, but if he could do it in a Williams, I think he wouldn't mind that either. So hopefully there's bigger and brighter things in the future for Williams Racing. And thank you to Claire and Sir Frank and everybody in the Williams family for everything that they've done for the sport and for the team. So you will be dearly missed. I'm sure it's not the last time we'll see you at the racetrack, but in this capacity, we thank you for everything that you've done. So with that, we move on to the final little bit of news before we get into the predictions, as the XRX Racing Series that we've been talking about with drivers coming in. And there's been a new announcement for another driver, as Willy T. Ribbs,
out of nowhere,
the first African-American to drive in the Indy 500. He's a 17-time Trans Am Series winner. And honestly, I never really heard of the guy before they announced this. And I mean, obviously, the more the merrier when it comes to this series. And I'm sure, Kyle, you can probably speak to it a little bit more because you know a little bit more about him than I do.
Yeah, he's basically the first guy in North America to really try to make racing an actual thing for an African-American person. And whether that's going to the Indy 500, running a few NASCAR races, or, of course, his success in Trans Am, he was basically the first guy to try out and do it well. Obviously, you have Wendell Scott and guys previous, but he was the first guy to kind of go all over. He had some tests over in England trying to make it an open meal and in Formula One. And if you would like to know more about the guy, there's an awesome interview with him in the Formula One podcast that they've been doing. They had him on, I believe it was a month or 2 months ago. But obviously, more notably on Netflix, there was recently a documentary called Uppity, the Willy T. Ribbs story, which is on Netflix. So you can check out either of those if you want to know more about Willy T. Ribbs. But out of nowhere, really, I was not expecting Willy T. Ribbs to be the guy that showed up as the next guy in this series. Of course, he's a little on the older side. He's 65, so not crazy old.
Is he really? Wow.
But definitely not as young as some of the other guys that we've seen named to the series already. But hey, it just kind of shows that the SRX series is going out and getting anyone and everyone that's interested. And the mix of drivers that we've seen already is pretty impressive. And I'll be excited to see Ribbs go up against some of the other guys that have already been named.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to check out those stories a little bit, educate myself for next summer, and I would love to see a 65-year-old guy against some of these guys that have just come out of or coming out of retirement or just gone into retirement, depending on the situation, or they were forced out of their seat. So it's going to be interesting to see how he performs up against some of these guys that are quite a bit younger than him, and I'm sure that this series is shaping up to be something very, very special. So with that, Kyle, I think that does it for the breaking news and everything else that's happened over the past week.
Just quickly before we move on, it's the F1 Beyond the Grid podcast. They had him on back at the end of July. It's about 1 hour, so it's a great place to kind of check out his thoughts recently on what's been going on in motorsports, his relationship with Lewis Hamilton, and, of course, his racing career as well. Plus, of course, the documentary on Netflix, a couple good things to check out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to getting myself a little bit more invested and educated on Willy T. Ribs. How can you not love a guy with that kind of name?
I know, right?
It's pretty awesome. So this is it, Kyle. This is the big moment.
Yes, it is.
Another predictions video. We had our silly season predictions about a month or so ago. Now we move into crunch time here, as it's the 2020 NASCAR playoffs prediction, and it's going to be quite the ride, as this is the first season we've really seen a shakeup with the drivers, the tracks for the playoffs. It's quite a different mix than we've seen in years previous, with Darlington being added to the playoffs this year, Bristol being added to the playoffs this season, Talladega and the Charlotte Roval in the same round. Man, this is going to be
There's
very,
some
very
wild
interesting.
ones.
And Martinsville as the finale cutoff race in the round of 8, which is going to be absolutely insane on a short track. So NASCAR has listened to the fans, and they've revamped this playoff, and I absolutely love it. I think it's a great mix of everything that you see. I mean, maybe you'd add a road course in there, one more, but other than that, I don't think I'd really touch this playoff, these tracks. So I'm excited to see what you've got for your playoff predictions. I've got mine all ready to go here. So I think we just jump right into it here.
Let's do it.
Obviously, we covered over the past week that William Byron and Matt DiBenedetto were the last two to make it into the NASCAR playoffs this season, as Jimmy Johnson, the 7-time champion, will not be in this year, along with Eric Jones and a couple of other rookies that just missed the cut this season. So the playoff grid coming into Darlington this weekend looks like this. So we've got Kevin Harvick on the top spot with Denny Hamlin in second. Obviously, those have been the two-horse race up top and competing for most of the wins this season. Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano, the Penske duo, right there in third and fourth. Chase Elliott in there in fifth. Martin Truex Jr. has been on a tear recently with 8 consecutive top 4 finishes. He's in
That's
sixth.
Insane.
Ryan Blaney in seventh, the other Penske driver. And then we've got 2 Hendrick Motorsports drivers of Alex Bowman and William Byron. Austin Dillon in 10th. Cole Custer, the rookie, who wins Rookie of the Year by making the playoffs. I think that's a little bit interesting. I think they should just kind of keep it where they have
I'm
points.
not huge on that, but that's a whole nother discussion.
That's another discussion. So a rookie makes it this season for the first time in forever.
A long time.
It seems like a long time. Eric Almirola is also in there. No wins. We're into the no-win drivers here now. Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch, the defending series champion, his brother Kurt there in 15th, and Matt DiBenedetto with 0 playoff points coming into this, rounds out the playoff grid. So that's what it looks like coming into this. Harvick and Hamlin are miles ahead of everybody in terms of playoff points, so they're going to be very, very secure for a long period of time. It's going to take some sort of miracle if they don't advance very, very far into these playoffs. So let's get into it, Kyle. Here, the round of 16 with Darlington, Richmond, and Bristol. We've got 4 drivers going out of this round, and I think we go back and forth here, kind of see who we got and if there's any similarities, any differences. So who do you have missing the round of 12?
We'll begin with the one that I feel like is probably as close to a unanimous pick as you can get, and that's the rookie Cole Custer. He's definitely picked up his performance as the season has gone on, but the win was a little, I won't say fluky because it was a great restart on his end, but it wasn't like it was a race that he dominated, and he hasn't really shown that consistent speed all year long. You look at the 3 tracks that we're going to here, and at Darlington earlier this year, he was not competitive whatsoever. Average finish of 26.5 of the 2 races that he was at earlier this year. And then if you look at Richmond and Bristol as well, they're not really great tracks for him at the Xfinity level as well. You look at Richmond, he has the 1 win there, 4 top 10s and 7 starts. You look at Bristol, no wins in 6 starts, 4 top 10s there. So even at the Xfinity level, these tracks haven't really been Cole Custer's bread and butter. So if you look at these races, you look at the performance this year, it's a nice story that we have a rookie in here, but he's quite clearly the lowest ranked driver out of everybody in the playoffs, and I don't think that these 3 races shape up for a surprising performance from Custer either. I have him being my first guy out.
Yeah, if there's a mile and a half, I maybe giving him a shot with SHR's performance on those kinds of tracks this season. But with this schedule, and you've got the competition when you look at what the competition he's up against, it's very hard to think that Cole Custer is going to make it out of this round. And I also have him out in the round of 16. So Cole Custer, I think that's pretty unanimous on many people's playoff predictions. So we move on to the second playoff prediction here, and I'll go here next because I think this is maybe another one that you will probably have. It's Austin Dillon. I don't think he makes it out of the round of 16 here. That number 3 car, what a shock. RCR has taken leaps and bounds of performance this season. They've exceeded expectations. They have a driver in the playoffs for the first time since Austin Dillon did it back a couple of seasons ago. And Tyler Reddick was almost on the verge of making it as well. So I think if you're RCR, you take the positives from this season. Austin Dillon has a way, though. He does have a way of getting through these rounds just by getting the finishes and getting the car to the finish line, because that's a key factor in this opening round. You just have to minimize mistakes, especially for a guy that only has 5 playoff points coming into this. So not too much above the cutoff line. It's only 2 points for him. But those, maybe those 2 points is what he needs to move on to the round of 12. But I just don't quite see these tracks as being the personal strength. If it was in a mile and a half, I think it's maybe a bit of a different story as well for Austin Dillon. But with these kind of tracks, I just don't see that number 3 car making it to the round of 12. So what about you, Kyle? Do you have him advancing or eliminated?
I do have Austin Dillon being eliminated as well. I do think that there is a path to him making it through to the round of 12, though. I personally don't believe it'll happen because he needs a couple big performances. But there are a couple tracks here that are kind of interesting ones. Beginning this weekend at Darlington, you look at some of the stats of all the playoff drivers here coming into this race, and his average finish over the last 10 here, obviously he's only run the last 8, but of the last 10 Darlington races, his average finish of the playoff drivers ranked 7th. So that's pretty solid here, but the key thing is that he needs to capitalize and have a big Darlington if he's going to make it through, because at Richmond, he's on the flip side where he's on one of the lower. He ranks 13th of that. He has just 2 top 10s in 10 races at Richmond, an average finish of 17.7. Not great stats there. So he's going to need a big Darlington to make up likely for a poor Richmond. And then it comes down to Bristol, and that's where it's kind of been hit or miss for Dillon. Obviously, earlier this year had a top 10, but over his career hasn't been great here either. So there's definitely a path to him making it through to the round of 12. Needs a big Darlington, needs a better than expectation finish at Richmond, and then another probably close to top 10 or even a top 10 at Bristol if he's going to make it through. I just don't see that as likely, so I also have him on the outside. But definitely a better candidate to make it through than Cole Custer. Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you have next for your elimination?
So here's where it starts to get interesting, because I feel like most people have Dillon and Custer on the outside just because those are the 2 guys who won and jumped their way into the playoffs from being outside the top 16 in points. So here's where it starts to get interesting for everybody, and I'll go with my next lowest ranked driver out of the playoffs here, and that is William Byron. He's got the momentum coming in here, coming off of the win at Daytona, but I just haven't seen the consistent speed from that team this season without practice to really bet on them going into this first round of 16. And when I look at William Byron's results here at these 3 tracks over his career, it doesn't give me much to really look at here, because you look at Darlington, just barely a better average finish than Cole Custer. He ranks 15th out of the playoff drivers over these last 10 races. You look at Richmond, it's definitely a little bit on the better side, but again, it's nothing fantastic. Ranks 11th out of the playoff drivers. And at Bristol, slightly better again. He has the 1 top 10 here in the 5 races he's been here, but again, only 10th out of those. And you average that up, and that's not a great average out of these. And you factor in the fact that he's only got he doesn't have a huge buffer It's not tracks that he's been great at here. And the fact that the team really hasn't shown a ton of like top 5, top 10 speed this year, it kind of breaks my heart to do it, but I just don't see William Byron making it through given the rest of the competition here and how consistent they've been.
Interesting. I disagree with you on this one.
Okay,
I do not have William Byron out in the round of 16. I have him advancing to the round of 12, but I have his Hendrick Motorsports teammate not getting out of this round, and Alex Bowman. I just have not seen speed from that team basically since they've come back from the pandemic. That 88 car has really, really struggled. Obviously has had 2 solid finishes the last 2 weeks here at Dover and at the Daytona Super Speedway. So, I mean, maybe you look at that as a little bit of optimism for the 88 team, but when I look at his track record on these tracks, Darlington is his saving grace here. If he gets a good weekend out of that with a solid starting position this week, maybe he has a chance, but I don't like him at Richmond, and I don't like him at Bristol. I think he's up against tough competition at those 2 tracks. I think when I looked at it, I'm like, do I think William Byron can outpoint Alex Bowman? And I said yes. That was my main decider. I was thinking Byron maybe, but I just went with momentum here a little bit with the win. And I think Chad Knaus, the veteran that he is atop of the pit box, can make that little bit of extra difference here for William Byron. So I have Alex Bowman not making it to the round of 12. Obviously, he sneaked through there last year. I don't think he gets as lucky this time around. So if the Roval was in there, maybe I'd put him in, but not this time around with Alex Bowman. So I have him as my 3rd driver out on the round of 16. So Kyle, do you want to go ahead with your 4th, and we'll see if our prediction matches?
I will, because I also have Alex Bowman on the outside looking in here in the round of 16. Similar to William Byron here, these 3 tracks don't really match very well for Alex Bowman, plus the fact that this team has been in a catastrophe since the return, essentially. You look at Darlington, he has the 2nd place finish here, but you look at the rest here, and it's an 18th and 18th and a 23rd with Hendrick Motorsports, which one great finish, but outside of that, 3 outside the top 15. You look at Richmond, not great at all. No top 10 so far. Best finish of 12th. And then you go to Bristol, and early on at Hendrick, he was really solid there. Started off with a 5th and an 8th, but the last 3 times he's been there, 23rd, 15th, and then obviously got caught up in the wreck last time out and finished 37th. So there's a couple positive signs if they can quickly turn this team around, if they've maybe been saving stuff for the playoffs and are kind of come out guns a-blazing here in the playoffs. I just don't have the faith that that's actually going to happen, and I feel like it's going to be Byron and Bowman disappointingly going out early for Hendrick Motorsports. And so, of course, that means that I have Alex Bowman, William Byron, Austin Dillon, and Cole Custer all being eliminated here in the round of 16. Who is your final pick here to go out in this round?
It's the guy who squeaked in at the Daytona Super Speedway. It's Matt DiBenedetto. This is his first time in the playoffs. I think that's impressive enough in itself that he made it this season. We all expected him to make it when he got that ride with the 21 car at the Wood Brothers, but with no playoff points coming in, he's already at a tremendous deficit to these guys. I know it's only 5 points, but I don't like him at Darlington this weekend that much compared to some of these other guys, and I don't like him at Richmond at all. I looked at what he did in the 95 car last season, and it wasn't even impressive then when it's a Toyota and it's statistically terrific at Richmond. He did not do great there that last season. And then Bristol might be a saving grace. Once again, there's one track in all of these rounds here for one driver to maybe have that one breakout race. But I think these two races at the beginning of this round will do him in just enough where he can't make that deficit up at Bristol. I mean, he almost won there last season. Don't get me wrong, but Matt DiBenedetto, I think the 21 car itself isn't the greatest around Bristol. Obviously, they've had a lot of practice around there this season with the May race and then the All-Star race, but I think he just misses out to make it to the round of 12 here this season. So for my round of 16 outages, I've got Alex Bowman, Austin Dillon, Cole Custer, and then rounded off Matt DiBenedetto. So a little bit of difference there. 3 out of the 4 for both of us in terms of similarity, but obviously a little bit of difference with William Byron and Matt DiBenedetto. So I feel pretty solid about those. I mean, kind of a similar path. I mean, I'm happy to see that you have faith in DiBenedetto and you think he's going to make it out of this round. Was he close for you to make it, or would you say that he was kind of a lock?
I was kind of going between him and William Byron at the end, but I went with DiBenedetto just because there's that Bristol race in there where he's got to show up big. But I also have a little bit more faith in him at Darlington than you do. Looking at the 3 races that he's run here in competitive equipment, last year in the 95, he finished 8th. And then earlier this season, in the first race, not fantastic, 14th, but followed it up the second day with a 9th place finish. So he's been in and around that top 10 consistently these past couple seasons in that upgraded equipment here, going back to Darlington for the 3rd time here, essentially having that data to pull from earlier this season. I feel like we could see a strong opening from Matt DiBenedetto here, and I'm kind of banking on that surprise good finish here at Darlington, and then follows it up with a good finish at Bristol to make up for what is likely going to be a very poor Richmond finish. But it's going to be very close. I assume it's going to be a 1 to 3 point difference between making it and not making it, between DiBenedetto, Bowman, and Byron, those guys that are all going to be around there. Or if we see somebody else surprisingly fall out. But we have all the likes of Kurt Busch, Clint Boyer, that even Kyle Busch, if you want to toss him in there. But I feel like he's a step up there. But there's quite a few, quite a few names that definitely are in that mix there. But yeah, for a first round, for Kyle Busch not having many playoff points banked up, it couldn't be too much better for him here. He's going to have that guaranteed decent starting position, or he's going to be in the top 16. You got to go for some of those stage wins, and you got to hopefully get a win here and try and bank something up going forward into that second round for sure.
Obviously, that Bristol night race stands out for him as a big opportunity. He finished second there in the All-Star race to Chase Elliott earlier this season, and he was in contention there.
Even
in the
Richmond
May race
as well.
Yeah, I love this round for him. I think he's this is, if he wants to get back on track and get 2020 righted, this is a great round for him to do so.
Yeah.
So,
and if I'm the rest of the competition, I'm very scared of this first round, because the last thing you want is Kyle Busch picking up momentum heading into the playoffs here as we go deeper here. Because if you're the rest of the guys here and you've got Kyle Busch all of a sudden racking up stage wins and maybe picking up, dare I say, a win, maybe even 2 here in this first round, that's a little bit scary going forward.
Yeah, and remember that if you get any stage points or playoff points, they carry over to the next round. So that's a huge thing. So even though Kyle comes into this round with 3 points, he could leave here with maybe 10 after this first round if everything goes according to what he hopes it will. So that's the round of 16 kind of covered here. We move on to the round of 12, and this is the make or break round. This is the craziest round. It's the wild card round. We've got Las Vegas tentatively for now. Hopefully local authorities will allow them to race at Las Vegas, but if they have, NASCAR has said that they have a backup option, or they have some sort of plan in place if they can't race at Vegas. So that's to be determined. That could shake the whole thing up here, because that kind of impacts on what my rationale was thinking here. And then we've got obviously the wild card in Talladega. You can get in a wreck here, just like Jimmy Johnson did at Daytona, and your playoff hopes are kind of ruined. But it's not a cutoff race this time, because they went to the Roval. They're going to the Roval for a cutoff race. It's going to be insane in the second round, nonetheless, where the points mean all the much more. Oh, man, it's going to be insane. Back-to-back races are going to be a thriller here. And don't count out Vegas. It's been quite the wild card as well over the past couple of seasons in the playoffs. So, Kyle, I think this is going to be one where we have a bit of a difference of opinion in terms of where we see things going here, because a lot of these guys, I was right on the verge, because you usually see maybe a big name or 2 even come out of this round because of just the wild card in Talladega. But add the Roval in there, it gets even crazier. So who do you have as your first guy to miss the round of 8?
Well, I feel like this is probably the best place to start, because you had him losing out in the round of 16. That's Matt DiBenedetto. If the first round works out pretty well for him, if you look at obviously Bristol being the best track of his career to this point, and the ability now in a competitive car to go out and finish top 5, even get a win if they don't have the same issues that they had earlier this year, where they missed the setup and then had mechanical issues and then got caught up in a wreck. If they avoid all that kind of stuff, Matt DiBenedetto was clearly one of the favorites to win at that Bristol race. So if you look at that first round and how it kind of works out fairly well for him, the second round is not. Vegas, he had the second place finish earlier this year, but if you remember that finish was very, very chaotic and fluky. The other 2 races that he's been here at Vegas in competitive equipment, both 21st. You look at Talladega, it's always a crapshoot, but of the crapshoot guys, he's never had a top 10 finish here at Talladega, and that's even with Go Fast Racing, when we've seen Corey LaJoie have some decent finishes these past couple of years at super speedways, even to the 95 last year as well. He's never had a decent finish at Talladega, to the point where of the guys that I have moving on to the round of 12, his average finish is lowest of all of those, and that's excluding some of those BK Racing days where it was basically start and parking. And then obviously to the Roval, that's the wild card. We know Matt DiBenedetto was a solid road racer, and he's been decent at the Roval. He has a 12th place finish out of the average out of the 2 races that we've been here, but he's going to need to do a lot more and probably have to go out and win the race if he's going to move on, given the fact that he has no playoff points going in, and he's probably only going to squeak through the round of 16 if he does. So for me, DiBenedetto is my first guy out of the round of 12.
I'm gonna go your kind of line of thinking here. I have William Byron missing out on the round of 8 here. If he makes it through that round of 16, that's good enough for me to think this is a successful season for William Byron. I just don't quite like him on the Charlotte Roval, and then Vegas, you've got your big horses there that are always going to perform there, and the Penske guys and Harvick and Truex. So I just don't think he's going to be able to outrun them, even if they have a mistake at Talladega. I don't think that he can recover in time. So obviously, he just won a super speedway track at Daytona. Don't count him out at Talladega, but I just don't think William Byron just has enough playoff points and the experience to get through the round of 12. So that's kind of the same 5 guys, I guess, through the first 5 predictions here for both of us. And let's just keep the ball rolling. I'm going to go with the next lowest guy that I have on the playoff grid. It's Kurt Busch.
Yes.
That guy he's super consistent, but he hasn't had the speed this season that he had last season. I think Chip Ganassi has taken a step back this season as an organization. Part of that has to do with no practice. Part of that has to do with Kyle Larson not being in the team as well to help lift that organization up. Kurt Busch just not had the 2020 compared to the 2019 that we saw last season, where he was a top 5, top 10 car consistently. It's kind of become an 8th place to 15th place car this season, I'd say. He's got a lot of top 10s. Don't get me wrong. He's got 14 top 10s. That's not bad for Kurt Busch, but I don't like this round for strengths at all for him. He's terrible at his home track in Vegas, has not had luck there over his entire career. On the high banks at Talladega, that's just a crapshoot. He always seems to get involved in something there, and he's not the greatest road racer either. So I don't think this round really matches up to Kurt Busch's skill set, and this will be the end of Kurt Busch's journey towards a 2nd Cup Series championship. So I'm guessing you follow the same line of thinking there, Kyle?
Yeah, for me, Kurt Busch, he's been the model of consistency all year long. He's been in like that 7th to like 13th range, basically every single race. But that can only take you so far. And I think in that first round, it probably works out well. It can take you through that first round, being that consistent. The wild card round that it is here in the round of 12 does not match up with that. And given that he doesn't have basically any playoff points, at least matching up against some of the other guys he has to beat out to make it to the round of 8. I don't think that model of consistency is going to work going forwards. He's going to need a big performance, and none of these tracks really shape up to be any of that. Obviously, you mentioned Vegas at a track that he's been surprisingly poor at his entire career, especially so over the past 10 races. The lowest of the guys that I have making it to the round of 12. Talladega, the crapshoot that it is. He has some good finishes here, an average finish of 11.2 over the last 10. That ranks 3rd. But can you really bet on Talladega to make a good result that can propel you forwards? And then obviously the Roval. We don't really think of Kurt Busch as a top tier road racer. He's been decent here at the Roval, but you need to be more than decent if you're going to be a bubble guy trying to knock out some bigger names going forward. So I also have Kurt Busch missing out. My 3rd guy, it was a little tough to do so, but I just feel even though the Roval is a very good track for him, I feel like the previous 2 probably result in him missing, and that's Clint Bowyer. That first round is fantastic for him with the 2 short tracks. Obviously, he's fantastic at Bristol, has some decent numbers at the other 2 tracks. I think he makes it through fairly comfortably, just given his skill set in those tracks. The second round, not so much. Vegas has not been too kind to Clint Bowyer, and 19.5 average finish over his last 10 here at Vegas. Just one top 10. If you're Clint Bowyer, you're probably hoping that you don't have to go to Vegas if you make it through to the second round. But if you look elsewhere than that, Talladega is always wild. Again, Clint Bowyer's been caught up in a lot of trouble here. He has 3 top 10s in the last 10, a 19.2 average finish. He's been caught up in a lot, but that's just kind of Talladega. That's kind of what it is for everybody. But the one saving grace for him is the Roval. He actually matches Chase Elliott's average finish at the Roval with 3.5. 2 top 5s in the 2 races here. He's been terrific here. We know how good of a road racer he is. We know that from your Daytona Road Course fantasy pick and how he won you that weekend. But I don't know if you can really bet on a big points performance at the Roval to get him through. I think that he needs to win the Roval or Talladega if he's going to make it through. You can't really bet on Talladega, and I feel like Chase Elliott's been on such a heater at road courses that even if you want to put Clint Bowyer through, it's going to be tough to do so with Chase Elliott and even some of the other guys like Ryan Blaney and even Denny Hamlin, who's really shown his road course prowess recently. So for me, Clint Bowyer's on the outside looking in of the round of 8 as well.
Yeah, I honestly, I like this round a little bit more for Clint Bowyer than maybe you do, but I still have him out as well. I just think he's just in just a little bit too much of a hole here as that gap widens between the cutoff line with the guys who have earned their playoff points so massively and Clint Bowyer, who only has, I think it's 4 playoff points coming into this. So not a bunch of stability and comfort there for Clint Bowyer for sure. If maybe he can get a stage win or 2 in the first round, that'll help him maybe. But this second round, that Roval, once again, his saving grace, if he comes away with there, I just think he's a top 5 guy. He's not a top 2 or 3 guy. I think he's like the best of the rest kind of thing with you when you've got Truex and Chase Elliott. If he was in the Chase Elliott kind of caliber in terms of winning on a more consistent basis, then I would maybe think about having Clint Bowyer making it to the round of 8. I was very close to putting him there, but I just don't have him squeaking through to the round of 8. I think it'll be close. I think he could be that 9th or 10th guy. I don't think he'll be the 11th or 12th guy by any means. I think he'll be within 10 to 15 points of missing the cutoff line if it's going to happen. It could be even less than that. Who knows? But
he's definitely going to make it close at that Roval, though.
Yeah, I think Clint Bowyer will have everybody on the edge of their seats as he always does. He doesn't like the Zoom meetings that we're doing right now after he did his media availability for the playoffs. So always a character. I hope he's back in the sport, honestly, next season. But if he's not, I hope he's in a booth at Fox next season to revamp that coverage just a little bit more. But that's a little bit off topic. Clint Bowyer, I just have him missing the round of 8. So that's 3 guys that we've talked about a little bit here. 3 different guys, but 2 predictions so far for myself. Or actually 3. It's 3.
Yeah, we've got
This is our big one.
We're going to the 4th one, and I want you to go first for this one.
Okay, so I'll give a little bit of, I was close to putting Joey Logano out of this round.
Ooh.
I was very, very close. I love him at Vegas, obviously. I just think luck runs out of the 22 at Talladega. And I don't like him as a road course racer at the Charlotte Roval. I was very, very close. I think he's going to be right there on that bubble. Blaney, I love this round for him. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic. It's going to have to take a lot of things to go wrong for Blaney to miss out because he's statistically run great on all 3 of these tracks. Truex, I love him at the Roval. Obviously, Talladega, he's not the greatest super speedway racer after having that really good race at Daytona last weekend. But other than that, I don't see him as a great super speedway racer, but I like him at Vegas too. It's just these couple of races in there that just make me think. So I'm going to go a bit safer here, and that's going to be Aric Almirola. I don't think Aric Almirola makes it out of the round of 12. Obviously, Kyle Busch is down there. I know that. But this is not biased whatsoever. This is completely what I think is going to happen in terms of what I've seen from performance. Kyle Busch has been unlucky. The races may not suit him the greatest, but he's going to be right there on that cutoff line. I think Joey Logano will have a bit of a rough round there, and I think Kyle will be able to capitalize it. When I look at the top 7, I think they're in really good shape. It's that 8th spot that's really up for grabs for that round of 8, and I think Kyle Busch takes it over Aric Almirola in that round. Kyle is a better road racer than Aric Almirola as long as he doesn't beat himself at the Charlotte Roval. Kyle was in a position to get a top 5 in the inaugural race there until everybody missed turn 1 at Tom's heartburn turn. But that was just that race. It was chaotic and crazy, but they have a little bit more experience around there now. I doubt that they'll make the same mistakes. So I have Kyle Busch advancing to the round of 8 and Eric Almirola, the guy who's been the luckiest with these qualifying draws when that was the formula. I just think the Vegas, he has decent numbers there over his career. I think it's around the top 10 in terms of who I have left, but you need to be a little bit more better than that in terms of making it to the round of 8. And obviously he has that Talladega win a couple of years ago in the playoffs too. But I just have a feeling that Eric Almirola just can't make it to the round of 8 this season, and the defending champion will come out on top in that battle. So, Kyle, who do you have as your 4th and final elimination from the round of 12?
I'm actually a lot on the same wavelength of you, and it did come down to Eric Almirola and Kyle Busch for me. And looking at these 3 races, yes, Almirola has a slightly more of a buffer than Kyle Busch does, but it's not much. And if you look at these 3 races, the ones that Almirola are good at is just the one, and that's Talladega here. And you look at what Kyle Busch has been good at, and he's been really solid at Vegas. And then obviously we all know his road course prowess. And I think it does come down to whether Kyle Busch beats himself here. We saw him try to run way, way too hard at the Daytona road course too early. We saw him cause himself multiple issues in that one. And then, of course, the mechanical failure later on as he tried to battle back. If he can avoid some of those issues at the Roval, try and avoid some trouble at Talladega, which, of course, most of the time isn't up to you, and start strong at Vegas, I think he makes it through. And I also have Kyle Busch being the final one to make it through. I have Almirola on the outside.
All right.
For me, it's just far easier to bet on Kyle Busch at Vegas and the Roval than it is Eric Almirola at Talladega. He has the best numbers of the guys I have in the round of 12 at Talladega over the last 10, 8.4 average finish. Of course, the win, 5 top 5s, 8 top 10s. He's been excellent at Talladega. But it's Talladega. You can't really bet on a guy to go out and have that dominant performance, pick up the stage points, pick up the good finish, or even the win to make it through. And so because of that, I feel it's much, much safer to bet on Kyle Busch at Vegas and the Roval than it is Almirola at Talladega. That's the difference maker for me. So I have Kyle Busch making it through by the skin of his teeth through to the round of 8.
I'm getting a little bit of a vibe from 2011 here with Kyle Busch. Tony Stewart struggled mightily that season, but then won 5 races of the 10 races in the playoffs. The Chase is what it was called back then. It was not the winner and you're in format, but he pointed his way to a tie with Carl Edwards in the championship finale and won on the tiebreaker based off of wins. And Kyle Busch can do a very similar thing with these rounds, and you just have to win 1 race per round. It may sound very easy, but it's obviously a little bit more complicated and difficult than that. But it can be as simple as that. If you're Kyle Busch, you have to win 1 race per round, and you're in the championship for in a matter of weeks here. So who knows what could happen here down the stretch, and that's Kyle's bogeys round if it's going to happen. That second round is obviously a wild card. Anybody can get eliminated in that round. Maybe Harvick and Hamlin are basically safe, but they could probably take a nap time. But Harvick's numbers aren't too great on the Talladega and the Roval. Obviously Vegas is a great racetrack for him. Hamlin maybe struggles there a little bit. He's not as safe as Harvick, but he's in a very good spot. But go ahead, Kyle. What were you going to say there?
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm glad you mentioned that because we haven't really talked about the top 7 guys going into the playoffs very much, and that's obviously Harvick, Hamlin, Keselowski, Logano, Elliott, Truex, and Blaney, because we all kind of have those guys all making it through because they have so many more playoff points than the rest of the field. They've been so consistent, all that kind of stuff. But as we start to jump ahead here and start looking ahead to who we have in the championship for, of those top 7 guys, who do you think is most at risk to miss out either here going forward into the round of 12 or into the round of 8?
Joey Logano is definitely one that pops out at me. I just don't – he had those 2 wins earlier in the season, and that's about it. 2 races in the first 4, and he hasn't won since. I don't think that's getting talked about enough. I think Logano's in – I know he's led a lot of laps in different kinds of races, but I think that's mostly been strategy-based. It has not been speed-based. I haven't seen that 22 car in the top 5 on a consistent enough basis to think that he's going to be a solid championship contender. Chase Elliott seems to find a way to get to the round of 8 usually, but if he beats himself, he could obviously come out. I love that Roval race for him. He does not have great Vegas numbers. Talladega is obviously a crapshoot, so Chase Elliott, if he doesn't perform at the Roval and something goes wrong where he misses turn 1 again and he can't recover, then you could look at Chase Elliott falling out in that round of 12 as well. I think those two names really pop out at me. If Blaney didn't have that strong of a run at these 3 tracks, I would probably think differently, but I like Blaney for that round a lot. So my 2 names to answer your question is Joey Logano and Chase Elliott in that round. So I'll put the question back to you. Who do you think, if there's anybody from that top 7?
Yeah, I like what you mentioned there, especially with Elliott in that second round, because obviously you focus on the Roval and basically pencil his name in as the winner there. But it's very much possible that he doesn't win that race and has trouble in the first 2 there and is on the outside looking in. But if I'm going all the way back here, and if I wanted to have a really, really hot take, I thought about it for a second, but I was like, nah, this is even too spicy for me. The round of 16, Bristol excluded, is awful for Ryan Blaney. You look at Darlington, does not have a top 10 there in his career. Average finish of 19.9 in 7 races. You look at Richmond, no top 10s there either in 8 races, an average finish of 25.5.
Yeah, he's not great.
He's been abysmal at both Darlington and Richmond. He obviously has a buffer to the cutoff line there in the round of 16. But he's kind of that first guy there. He's 7th there. It's not a huge buffer. It's a buffer. But if he's not able to pick up his performance at Darlington, at Richmond, obviously Bristol he's been amazing at, but is always wrecked out at. If it kind of goes that way, I think that we could very realistically see a situation where Ryan Blaney is having to have a good performance at Bristol to make it through. Now, I think he does, obviously. I have him making it through and having a really good second round and really propelling himself forward there. But if we kind of see those same issues in those first 2 races, and who knows what happens at Bristol because we've seen him wreck out of the lead time and time again at that track, who knows? I'm not going to go that hot of a take. But
no, it's
when
good.
I was looking at the numbers, that really stood out to me because Ryan Blaney is not a guy that you would expect to be at the bottom of the barrel in the round of 16 in the numbers, but he's second last or even last out of everybody at those 3 tracks in the round of 16. So for me, I'm kind of keeping an eye on Ryan Blaney, especially in those first 2 races of these playoffs, because I think that could really set up a very interesting Bristol race.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that Blaney really struggles at those 2 tracks when his teammates are really, really good at both of them. Obviously, that maybe just be his driving style or whatever it is. But he has, throughout the ranks, he hasn't really done well at both of those tracks. In the Xfinity Series, he struggled at Richmond as well. And in Penske equipment, that's usually pretty good around there as well. So I think that's definitely one to keep your eye on. Ryan Blaney in that first round of those top 7. And in the second round, I think you keep your eye on Chase Elliott, especially if he doesn't get lucky in those first 2 races and the Roval just does not go his way. And Joey Logano for myself in that round of 12, as well. So obviously they're not safe. Those top 7. Obviously,
anything can happen.
Anything can happen. It's 2020. I wouldn't
failure,
be surprised.
And all of a sudden,
yeah, it doesn't even have to be a wreck. It's just bad luck from not practicing, and you show up to the track and something breaks in the first 10 laps and you're screwed. So stage points are going to be huge. I know a lot of the bubble guys are going to be playing that strategy to get those stage points and try and get the best finish they can afterwards. We'll see if that strategy kind of pays off here as we go into the round of 16, because it's much, much tighter and compact the gaps in between each driver. And as the rounds go on, the playoff points become bigger and the gaps become bigger. And it's hard to make up for guys that are on the bubble and don't have as many coming into the playoffs. So that's kind of, we have the same 8 drivers out.
We have the same 8.
In the first 2 rounds. We move on to the round of 8, and we'll see if we can have a perfect championship between me and Kyle as we go down to this. So who do you have as your first elimination in the round of 8?
Well, if I'm going in order of how they sit at the beginning of the playoffs,
here it is.
I have to begin with Kyle Busch. And even though these are 3 tracks that he stands out at in terms of the statistics, I don't know, just based off of this season, if you can bet on a win. And I feel like he's going to have to win one of these if he's making it through to the championship race, unless he's able to bank up a ton of points earlier on in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. There's just such a big gap between him and those top guys in terms of the buffer that they have to that cutoff line. You can make it through the first couple rounds, just kind of running consistently, having good finishes, not having that buffer. But once you get to that round of 8, that's when it really starts to matter. And that's where Kyle Busch is going to regret the season that he had. Even though he's got the best stats at Martinsville out of the guys that I have left here, 5.6 average finish in the last 10, 8 top 10s, 2 wins. Even Texas, second to Kevin Harvick there. And even earlier at Kansas, he sits third of the guys that I have in the round of 8. Even though all the stats tell you that he should go through, the fact that he doesn't have all of those playoff points heading into things, and I don't know how much you can bet on the wins, I have him as my first guy out.
As much as it pains me to say it, I also have the similar line of thinking. I have Kyle Busch missing out on the championship for the first time since 2014. I was close to putting him in there because he just finds a way to get there. It's incredible to watch, but it's 2020, and I just think it's a reset year. It's very similar to 2014, where he didn't have the greatest year that year, and he misses out on the he just gets some bad luck, and these tracks line up really great for him, but 2020 has been a different beast. I mean, you look at Kansas, he was in third, bumps the wall and ruins his race there. Texas, obviously that was a nice race for him, finishing, I think it was 4th there behind the 2 RCR cars and Joey Logano. Then Martinsville had a terrible run earlier this season when they just completely missed the setup, as a lot of drivers did with no practice, and he never recovered. But other than that, he's had really, really strong Martinsville numbers. But yeah, I just don't think it's quite enough to make it to the championship for. But if he were to make to the championship for, what a story that would be. The defending champion makes it, but I think we're going to have a new champion in 2020. I don't think Kyle Busch goes back-to-back, as much as it pains me to say. I would love to add a new diecast to that collection right there with the 2 cars, but I think the third one will have to wait another season. So I also have Kyle Busch out in the round of 8. And I'll continue here with Ryan Blaney. I think this is where the 12 cars luck runs out. I think it's very similar to when he was in the 21 car a couple of years ago, where he kind of made it through the rounds. It got to the round of 8, but these tracks don't really line up too well for him. Kansas obviously is a decent track for him, not going to lie, but Texas, it's okay for him. And then Martinsville, he's not the greatest short track racer. That's definitely one of his better short tracks. Richmond's his worst by far, but Bristol's by far his best, and kind of Martinsville's in there in the middle. If they hit the setup, it's basically who comes off the truck really well in that race, because you see how quickly in the spring race here, how much missing the setup can mean for some drivers. You look at Hamlin, who missed the setup, and you would never think that of the 11 car this season, but they did. So I have Ryan Blaney out in the round of 8 here. So Kyle, do you follow the same line of thinking here?
I also have Ryan Blaney out, and it's definitely that same kind of thinking as you. He's okay at these tracks to good, but that's not going to get you to the championship for you. You need to be great at some of these tracks, especially when at this point of the playoffs, he has ground to make up in terms of the playoff points that have been banked up by some of the other drivers. And I don't think that this trio of tracks can really make it up for him. Of course, if he goes out and gets that 3rd straight win at Talladega, if he goes out and wins again at the Roval, maybe that changes things because he picks up some more playoff points that he can carry over. But for me, I just think that he's on the outside looking in. I feel like there's some more consistent drivers up there at the front of the field. We've seen time and time again this season when Ryan Blaney has had the car to beat, they've kind of beat themselves as well. So when you factor that in, you factor in the fact that these are 3 tracks that he's been decent to good at, but not great. He's also my second guy on the outside looking in, but that's another guy that's outside of that kind of top echelon in terms of that top 6. I think he's kind of in that middle ground between the top 6 of real true championship contenders and that next kind of ground. But I could be very wrong on that. We'll see how things play out. But yeah, I agree on Ryan Blaney also being out in this round. My next guy, my third guy on the outside, pains me to say it, but I have Chase Elliott missing out on the championship for once again. He's the number 5 seed coming into things. I just don't quite see it for him this year. Not a great start at Kansas. He's been, again, kind of similar to Ryan Blaney, obviously better than Blaney at this track, but kind of similar in terms of it being good, but not necessarily great compared to some of the other guys. You look at the numbers for Harvick, Truex, Busch, Keselowski, they're all a little bit to a lot better than Chase Elliott there. You move on to Texas. He's, again, in that kind of upper middle tier there, an average finish of 11.1, 5 top 10s, just the 2 top 5s, though. But, again, behind guys like Busch and Logano, who he'll be challenging for that final spot with. But then the big wild card is obviously Martinsville. He was on the verge of winning there not too long ago. He's been in contention multiple times. But if you look at his average finish, 13.4 is actually the lowest of all the drivers that I have in the round of 8, which means that it's the lowest of all of us because we have the same drivers in the round of 8 there. For Chase Elliott, I just don't really see this round of 8 really shaping up too great for him. Like if there was the Roval was in here, that would change things up. But for me, I have Chase Elliott on the outside looking in here just because I see guys like obviously Harvick, Hamlin, they just have such a big buffer. They're almost like penned in to the championship race at this point unless something catastrophic happens. And then when I'm looking at everybody else, whether it's Truex, Keselowski, Logano, I just feel like those guys have a better shot at making things. So I don't think that this is the year that Chase Elliott makes it to the championship for.
I also have Chase Elliott out in this round as well. It's shaping up to be like the same championship for it seems like for both of us here. But I think Chase Elliott is going to be that 5th guy that just misses the championship for the season. I think it's going to be very, very close for him. I like this round a little bit more than you do, I think, for Chase Elliott. But I mean, I thought the Chevrolets just seemed like they had such an advantage on the 1.5 miles at the beginning of the season with the new body and everything. But that advantage just kind of teetered off a little bit here. It's become definitely smaller. The pack has caught up to them a little bit, especially the Toyotas with Truex getting in there as well. So I think Chase Elliott will also miss out on the championship but it won't be for lack of effort. That's for sure. I think he'll be very, very close. Just that little bit of points difference between him and another guy that I've got in the championship for is going to be the difference. So that's who I've got for that's our 3. This comes down to it if we have the same championship for or not. So I'll go first here. I'll say who's going to make the championship for. You can basically just infer who it is. Joey Logano is going to miss the championship for this season, I think. He barely made it through my round of 12. I think he's done in the round of 8. I don't really like these tracks that much for Logano. Obviously had that must-win race at Martinsville when he won the championship a couple of seasons ago. But other than that, I like other guys more at Martinsville than Joey Logano. I don't really like Texas for him that much. Kansas not really that great either. I don't think that this round really suits Joey Logano. If you maybe added a short track in there other than Martinsville, I would think differently. But with everything else under the sun, I think Joey Logano and that Shell Pennzoil team will miss the championship for. So that means that my championship for is Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and Martin Truex Jr. I kind of gave it away a little bit right here. Just a little bit of a spoiler.
Hey, look at you go. I didn't realize that.
We got Martin Truex Jr., the little die cast there for our audio listeners. You can't really see it, but yeah, we got the little die cast there in the background. And Kyle try and spoil it a little bit in the background. But yeah, that's my championship for. So Kyle, I'm dying to know, do you have the same championship for as me? And this is kind of crazy that we both have the same exact kind of format.
Well, what I will say is, for starters, yes, I do have the same championship for, but I feel like looking at the way that these playoffs kind of play out, this is kind of the favorite four. Obviously, Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin just have such a crazy points buffer. That is going to take a catastrophe for either of them to miss out making it through to the championship four. And when you look at the other two guys in here, Martin Truex Jr. has been on such an incredible run here. I don't know how you can really deny him making it through here because he is so well-rounded as a driver as well. You look at these rounds and all of them, he's in that kind of top five of guys in each, basically every single race with the exception.
Yeah,
the exception of probably Talladega there. You look at this round of 8 as well. Kansas shapes up very well for him. Texas, maybe not so much compared to some of the other guys, but he's definitely a top 10 threat there at the very least. And then Martinsville, he's turned things around and made that one of his best tracks, 8 top 10s in the last 10, 6.6 average finish. He's been superb at Martinsville, obviously won there earlier this year. So I think that Martin Truex Jr., the form that he's been in, that team is firing on all cylinders. He's got to be probably in your championship 4, if not your number 3 guy behind Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin. And then other than that, Brad Keselowski, he's been, if we're talking about Kurt Busch as a model of consistency, well, Brad Keselowski is that just way higher up in the lineup. He's been underrated all season long. He's been in that top 3, top 4 regular point standings all year long. And we've only really started to pay attention to him now. When you look at these 3 races, Kansas is a decent one for him. But then the one that really gives me some pause is Texas there. He doesn't have some great numbers there. But then you turn that around and you look at Martinsville, a 6.6 average finish in the last 10 races, 9 top 10s out of those. He's been very good there. If he can kind of salvage some playoff points earlier on in the playoffs, maybe get a better than expectation finish at Texas, I have him making it through as well. But I have Harvick, Hamlin, Truex as my 3 close to locks, and then I have Keselowski just beating out Chase Elliott there for that number 4 spot in the championship 4.
Yeah, I think those 9 points that Keselowski has coming into these playoffs are going to pay dividends really largely in this round for himself. It's going to be close between himself and Elliott. I think Truex, if he doesn't perform really well at the first 2 races, I think he can go out there and win Martinsville and just lock himself in the championship 4. And, even if he struggles at Talladega in the second round, I think he's got the Roval to kind of lean himself on. Vegas, he's pretty good at as well. I don't want to sound like Hamlin and Harvick are total locks, because that second round for Hamlin, it's not the greatest for him by any means. Vegas, he's not statistically run really well there. And then you've got Talladega, the wild card, and then Roval, hit or miss for Hamlin, I could say, depending on his road course strength. So, but I think it's going to take a miracle for those guys to not make the championship 4. And I'm surprised that we kind of have the same championship 4, but it makes the most sense with the narrative of the season so far. I mean, Truex has been super consistent down the stretch. Keselowski's been super consistent all season. Then you got the 2-headed monster of Harvick and Hamlin. So it all comes down to Phoenix. This is it. The first time as the championship finale race for the NASCAR Cup Series, having been at Homestead for many, many years. It's going to be very, very interesting to see who can come out on top here. Harvick was the master of this place for almost a decade, I'd say. He was insane here. Hasn't had a win since 2018, since the reconfiguration has kind of hurt him a little bit since then, but I wouldn't bet against Harvick here. Denny Hamlin obviously won here last season in a must-win race for himself to punch his ticket to the championship 4. And he ran well here in the spring. Brad Keselowski, not the greatest numbers at Phoenix in his career, but I mean, it's Brad Keselowski. You can never count out the 2 car. And Martin Truex Jr., maybe it's a hit or miss for Truex sometimes at Phoenix as well. He can get a top 10, but then top 5, and then sometimes he's outside the top 10 looking in. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see who you have as your champion this season, Kyle, because each driver has their strengths and weaknesses at this track for sure. So kind of go break down, who do you have? We'll go one by one here, and then we'll get down to like who our 2 favorites are kind of thing here. So who do you think is like going to finish 4th in the championship here?
Yeah, so looking at these 4, you kind of set it up really well. Harvick dominated this place for a long time, but since that reconfiguration hasn't had the same kind of magic, Denny Hamlin, conversely, has kind of picked it up as well since that reconfiguration. And then you've got the 2 kind of outsiders outside of the big headed monster there of Keselowski and Truex trying to play catch up and maybe steal a championship there. For me, the number 4 guy right now has got to be Brad Keselowski. I think he's going to make it through to the championship 4. Obviously, he's been very, very consistent all season long, but I'm just not sure if Phoenix shapes up well for him in comparison to the rest of the guys. And obviously, we've seen time and time again, you have to win the race to win the championship. And I don't think you can really bank on that at Phoenix for Brad Keselowski. In the last 10 races at Phoenix, an average finish of 13th, 2 top 5s, just the 4 top 10s. Obviously, you would probably pick that up in the championship race. I don't doubt that. from that two team whatsoever. But when I look at Harvick, I look at Hamlin, their numbers here, and I look at how Truex consistently shows up in those championship races when the pressure's on, how well-rounded he is, how good he is at every single place that they go. For me, Brad Keselowski, out of the four that we have in our championship four, he's got to be my number 4 guy.
I also have Brad Keselowski at the 4th guy. Numbers don't usually lie in these kind of instances. In previous years, with Homestead being the finale, the top 4 guys in the championship typically run in the top 4. I think Phoenix could be a little bit different than that. I think it's more down to car setup more than anything. And Brad Keselowski, I think they just don't quite have enough to be right up there with the Harvick and Hamlins and even Truex at some points in the race. So, I think Brad Keselowski, if he comes away with a championship, props to him. It's going to be quite the upset this season if he's able to take down Harvick, Hamlin, or Truex at that finale, since it's not the greatest racetrack for him. But he's proved us wrong kind of this season in terms of his consistency, and who knows what that driver, the number 2 car, can do when it comes down to crunch time here on the championship finale. So I agree with you there. Who's your 3rd guy for the championship here? Who do you think's just going to miss out on that 2-headed race here for the championship?
Yeah, so it's kind of the obvious pick at this point. It's Martin Truex Jr. as my number 3, but I think he's going to be right up there with those two, running top 3, top 4, if maybe there's somebody else running up there at the end of that Phoenix race. If I'm looking at Martin Truex Jr., he doesn't have the greatest numbers at Phoenix, similar to Brad Keselowski, but I feel like he has that switch that he can flip where it's the pressure race, it's the championship race, he needs to perform, and I feel like he can do that. When I look at Phoenix here, again, the 4 top 10s, 3 top 5s in the last 10 races, nothing spectacular there, but we've never really seen Phoenix be that really high-pressure race for Martin Truex Jr. I feel like in this high-pressure situation, he's shown up well in the past, and I feel like he'll be right up there with the top 2, but I feel like he's just a step behind them, both in terms of their performance all season long and in terms of the individual driver performance at this racetrack.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of that comes down to James Small being in his first kind of playoff run here. If Cole Pearn was the top of the box, I'd even have a little bit more faith in that 19 car. Yeah, but I think that makes a little bit of a difference here as you come down the stretch here. I think you want as much experience as you can, not to knock James Small at all. He's done a terrific job this season.
Just look at the run they're on.
They just haven't had the wins yet to really, for me to think that they have a shot here at Phoenix to beat the 2-headed monster of Harvick and Hamlin. If they do it, once again, like Brad Keselowski, props to them, because it's going to take a lot for anyone in the field, if our predictions aren't right, anybody who ends up in the championship to knock down Harvick and Hamlin. So once again, we're very, very close in terms of what our line of thinking is. It all comes down to this, as who do we have winning the championship? Kevin Harvick for his 2nd career championship, or Denny Hamlin trying to not get that monkey off his back and get his first career championship? Or will he be the best driver of all time to never get a championship? Who knows? So we'll see here. Kyle, who is your championship prediction for 2020?
I feel like my thought process on this changes on a near daily basis at this point as to who the favorite is, because if you look at the numbers, Kevin Harvick has been so dominant at Phoenix over his entire career. And if this was pre-reconfiguration, I feel like everybody would have Kevin Harvick winning this championship. But since the reconfiguration, he's just had that slight step back, and Denny Hamlin slightly ticked it up a little bit of a notch. And we saw last year in the high-pressure situation, Denny Hamlin went out there and won at Phoenix. And I feel like this time around, it's going to be a head-to-head battle between Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin at the front of this field here at Phoenix, the first time that the championship race is at Phoenix. And I have Denny Hamlin going out and winning his first career championship. I feel like Phoenix is a track that really suits him going in here. He doesn't have that same super, super high echelon numbers that Kevin Harvick does, but we've seen last year, obviously, as I mentioned, in that high-pressure situation, he went out and performed extremely well. This year didn't have the great Phoenix race earlier this season, but I feel like that team turns it around. They show up big time this time out at Phoenix. They kind of get rid of all the demons, all the mistakes. They have finally a good championship race where nothing goes wrong, they go out and they beat the number 4 car straight up.
All right. This is the difference. I've got Kevin Harvick winning the championship. I think he's just been that little bit ahead of Hamlin the whole season. I know Hamlin's been right there toe-to-toe. We've seen them countless times in the top 2 finishers. But I think Harvick he's got to have a second championship in his career here. He's been so good since he's come over to Stewart-Haas racing in the number 4 car. It's shocking to me that he only has one championship then, and that was in his inaugural season back in 2014. I'm getting similar vibes with that this season, where he was just that little bit better than the rest. And I know it's going to take a lot to take down Denny Hamlin here. He's going to be clenching the wheel. He's got the bit between his teeth. He's going to be really, really hungry for this championship. But I think Rodney Childers on top of the pit box will make a huge difference that weekend at Phoenix. Kevin Harvick, it doesn't really reconfigure the track. It's just they changed the corner numbers. I don't know if that has anything to do with psychologically speaking for Kevin Harvick, but they didn't really reconfigure the track. It's just the pit road that they really changed for him. Yeah. So, he's still got the same kind of, experience around Phoenix that he needs to have. I think Kevin Harvick is my favorite to win the championship. And I think, maybe the playoffs aren't his greatest strengths, but when it comes, they can already focus on their Phoenix car if they wanted to. They can put
they probably already are.
They can put so much prep into this car, and, the amount of simulation and the amount of time that they can put into this. He's even 10 points really ahead of Hamlin in the playoff standings. Obviously as the regular season champion, that adds that little bit of extra boost here. But I think for this second year running, the regular season champion is the champion. So I think Kevin Harvick is going to be one heck of a cookie to crack here as we get down the stretch here to Phoenix. It's going to be very, very difficult for anyone to upset either Harvick or Hamlin. I don't think there's really a wrong pick here between the two drivers. If it's not one of those two, it's 2020. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. Who the heck knows? You could have Matt DiBenedetto winning this damn championship. Anybody could win this. It's crazy to say. Usually these predictions, it's in any case with any other sports, you can get them wrong with the flip of a switch. It's just a crapshoot when it comes to predicting these things. So basically the only difference was our champion for the season here, which is, a little bit encouraging that we have a little bit of a difference there. But for the most part, I'm surprised with all of our similarities here.
Yeah, you kind of look at it through in that first round. There's a couple interesting ways you could go with it, but throughout it kind of shapes up to be, I wouldn't say predictable because NASCAR is anything from it, especially with the playoff format. But you can kind of see these tiers, and the tiers kind of match how the playoffs go. There's a fairly distinct top 13. I would probably say maybe you could stretch that to 14 in the round of 16. There's probably 2 to 3 guys in that mix of missing out there outside of Austin Dillon and Cole Custer. You move on to the round of 8. And again, there's probably a top 9 that you're looking at to make it through there. And it's kind of just picking between Eric Almirola and Kyle Busch in that round of 8. And then you go to the championship 4, and it really feels like you've got a top 3 there with Martin Truex Jr. joining the top 2 dogs. And then whoever you have there is the 4th guy. Obviously, anything can happen. There's mechanical failures, wrecks. Anything can happen in each round. Inevitably, one of those top guys in that top 6 or 7 is going to miss out at an earlier stage than we kind of expect. But the way that it kind of breaks down right now, it really does feel like there's a decent pathway to kind of predicting things with maybe 2 to maybe 3 names changing in each round. So it definitely surprised me how close it was, especially going forward to the championship 4. But it didn't surprise me too much just how similar it was, because I really do feel maybe a little bit different than years past. There's quite separate tiers this season in terms of in the real upper echelon, kind of in that upper mid pack, and then that middle pack, and then kind of the guys that I won't necessarily say lucked into the playoffs, but let's just say if the playoffs weren't winning your end, they wouldn't be on the inside of the playoffs. I'll say that. But it's definitely shaping up to be a very interesting playoffs. I love what they've done with the schedule here. The cutoff races are all amazing cutoff races, whether that's you look at Bristol and Martinsville as places to beat and bang, or you look at the Roval, and it's a wild
Another
card
place to
because
beat and
we've
bang.
seen time and time again. Exactly. So
perfect.
When I look at everything that NASCAR's done here, I love the schedule. And as much as we've complained about Harvick and Hamlin going head-to-head all year long, if that continues through these playoffs and we get to see a championship battle between Harvick and Hamlin, that's going to be must-see TV. That's going to make the season so worthwhile because seeing those guys go head-to-head week in, week out has been a little bit tiring at times. But if they get to do it at Phoenix with the championship on the line at a track that they're both superb at, I feel like that could be pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if this whole season was Harvick and Hamlin dominating and neither of them win the championship, you have to feel for either guy. And it's just, what was it all for kind of thing. I mean, if it was a regular point system where, it wasn't like this one-off race for the championship, whoever finishes ahead of the other gets the championship, then maybe you'd think a little differently, but it comes down to 4 drivers. Anybody can go out there and just finish ahead of the other guy. You don't have to win the race, even though that's what it's taken in every single year that this playoff format has been introduced. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm not as excited as a year prior because of the success of my driver personally this season. It's been nice to know that
definitely going to be a lot more nerve-wracking earlier on.
I'm going to be, sweating a little bit more. Definitely going to be on the edge of my seat, making a little bit more emphasis on the bad calls or the loose tire speeding penalties, for God's sake. Like, who knows what's going to happen here for any of our drivers. I mean, we've got quite the selection to choose from in terms of who we want to win the championship, but this is basically who we think is going to win. It's not who we want to win necessarily. It's who we think. Definitely would be a lot different for both of us if it was the other case. But I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be one heck of a ride here down to the finish here of the season. Lots to keep track of. The Xfinity Series and the Truck Series playoffs start a little bit later than the Cup Series, so we'll keep you all up to date with that in terms of the NASCAR side of things. And I can't wait. This is going to be one heck of a finish. The last 10 weeks here, no doubleheaders. It's just one race for each of these guys. They have to show up to the track the day prior. That's basically it for them. There's no practice, no qualifying for the playoffs, which is kind of interesting. How much of an impact will that make? I mean, you've seen this season how it's kind of evolved here with Hamlin and Harvick getting off the truck really well and just having the setups they need to make the car better. So, Kyle, this has been quite the ride so far over these summer months, getting to talk about this in anticipation and building towards these moments.
We're finally here.
One heck of a way to start it this weekend at Darlington, the NASCAR Throwback Weekend. Lots of cool different paint schemes. It's definitely one of the races to watch of the season. Maybe not necessarily for the racing, but just to see the history and everything back on track of paint schemes.
Oh, man.
This is probably one of the better years of throwbacks, to be honest. I mean,
it's really good.
I've never had really a bad weekend with the Throwback Weekend. I think everybody nails their paint schemes for the most part, and I'm excited to see everybody throwing it back to different eras. And who knows? I mean, you could see non-playoff drivers winning these playoffs. Jimmy Johnson still looking for that final win of his career here. Eric Jones in a free agent kind of mode here as he looks for a ride in 2021. Could a rookie come in there and spoil the party? Talladega is always the wild card. You never know. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could just spoil the party and just say nope to one of the playoff drivers who needs the win and just go out there and win the darn thing himself. So lots of different things to keep you track of this season. So any final thoughts here, Kyle, before we move into the playoffs over the next 10 weeks?
Yeah, I'm just super excited for things. Everything that we've done with the show over the summer has led up to this point. Everything that we've watched over the full season has led up to this point. The storylines have been pretty crazy all season long. It's been a wild season filled with dominance from 2 drivers, crazy storylines on the playoff cutoff line, but everything has led up to this point starting this weekend at Darlington, and I cannot wait to get things underway.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, buddy. This is going to be one heck of a ride, and I'm so glad that we get to talk about it on a weekly basis. We're moving in the shows to Monday, like we said on Tuesday, for 1 hour kind of things, what we're aiming for to try and help us with our school schedule here as it starts next week. And then we'll have you all the previews and the fantasy stuff during later in the week here. Maybe on a Thursday or Friday. That's still to be determined on when we'll record that. But we've got you locked here. We got you locked here at the Green Flag here. Got a new background here for the.
It's looking damn good.
Got a little bit of a budget increase here over the past week or so. So that's nice. It's not just a plain wall anymore. So really looking forward to these final 10 weeks here and talking with you, Kyle, about all these evolving storylines. I mean, there's so much more in the motorsports world than just these playoffs, free agency, and everything under the sun. But we've got you covered here at The Green Flag. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram at that handle, at The Green Flag. And we'll be having our playoff brackets on there shortly so you can get a full visual. And then we'll have probably some sort of graphic after this weekend in terms of who wins the throwback weekend. Hopefully it's a good-looking paint scheme. It better be a throwback paint scheme that ends up in victory lane. I don't want to see any of this non-throwback, but I don't think there's anybody really in contention to win that doesn't have a throwback really this weekend. So, that kind of concludes this show. Lots of fun here today. Very similar playoff bracket as we've discussed at length, and we'll see how wrong we are by the end of this, how right we are at the end of this, and who comes out on top as the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion. So with that, I've been your host, Lukas Wacker, and alongside me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And thank you for watching so much. We really appreciate it, and we will talk to you again after the Darlington Throwback Weekend next Monday.